2 of my Books for Young Men series, and we're talking about The Book Thief now. The Book Thief. What's it about? It's about a young girl in Nazi Germany who has been put into foster care and is living with a family that is anti-Nazi, which we love. And it is about her life growing up in Nazi Germany up until a couple years into the war and her perception of what is happening. It is told through the eyes of Death. Not Death the Kids from Soul Eater, but Death, more like this guy. He's got a pretty sharp, scary little side there. But I think it is such an incredible read. Just in general, for all audiences, a fantastically written book. And even though the prose is a little bit confusing because it bounces around a little bit with the narrator and kind of the narrator's location, by the time you're about 2 chapters into the book, you understand, okay, this is being told through Death, and thus Death is put forward as this kind of like omnipotent being that is able to kind of bounce around timelines, and so you can get a better look into different angles of what's happening. Anyway, that aside, genuinely brilliant read, and I know this came out so long ago and I'm very late to the party reading this book. I only read it this year, but genuinely I'm glad I did. I bought it and I finally read it. I'm so glad I did because this book sets such a great example for young men and some of the issues they're facing at the moment, and I'll explain why. Before we get in that, you can pick up this book from the description down below, bookshop.org, which works with small independent booksellers to get them a little bit more of a kickback when you buy through them. Alternatively, pick up the book from your local library. Why am I recommending this book? Because young men are being failed by men probably my age and older. I'm at like the cusp of Gen Z. I'm like the year they say Gen Z starts and where millennials end. And I think it is men kind of my age up until maybe 40, 45 plus that are failing young men at the moment. Men my age and older are basically, not all of us, not all of us are going down that right-wing pipeline, but a lot of people are pushing young men down this right-wing pipeline, trying to say stupid stuff like, emotions, bad. You should be rough and tough and shouldn't display your emotions, man. You should go and follow far-right Nazi-like rhetoric. There are like open neo-Nazis out there. And this book tells you the exact opposite of that. It presents you with characters who are the exact opposite of what these alpha males are trying to present young men right now. So, obviously, one bunch of Nazis in this book, and it does not sugarcoat the atrocities that Nazis committed, but it also doesn't sugarcoat the absolute fanaticism of the Nazi regime and the likes of the Hitler Youth and the likes of just German citizens who were swept up in the far right just extremities of Nazi Germany. And it shows how just peculiar it is, these fascist regimes, and unfortunately that peculiarity is being spread now in the West, particularly across Europe and the United States, even parts of South America. We have these far-right fanatics who have convinced people that the insanity of far-right ideology is normal, and we keep seeing people pushing it further and further that way. And this book purely shows you the kind of fanaticism of Nazi Germany, whether it be the book burning and the almost cult, well, not just almost, it is a cult-like activity of the book burning, whether it be the Hitler Youth brutalizing young boys to shape them into being the perfect soldiers for Nazi Germany going forward, whether it be the way they would do eugenics on Germans to try and see which ones can be turned into super soldiers. the kind of rhetoric we're seeing from the far right, trying to like eugenicize young men and boys into building them to be like these perfect alpha males. Like, I get getting into health, getting into fitness. I'm on a fitness journey as well. I've been, I've improved my health significantly over the past 2 months, but I'm not doing that because I want to be an alpha male. I'm doing that because I want to live a long time. Like that, those are the differences and why you should be pursuing those things. And also, and most brutally of all, it shows you the dehumanization of Jewish people in Nazi Germany. Like the open humiliation Jewish people had to face in Nazi Germany. And this is a thing that the far right is trying to normalize now. They want to openly brutalize minorities. They want to openly humiliate minorities. I mean, we saw hardcore race riots in Britain not 5 months ago, and you're going to see more race riots. You saw those neo-Nazis in the United States, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago, just in the streets. The police weren't doing anything. That's because the police are generally neo-Nazis as well. So that stuff is happening more and more, and we're seeing young men being pulled into those circles. Books like this show you the insanity of that. And the second reason I want young men to read this book is specifically the character of Hans Huberman. Hans is the foster father of our main character, Liesel. And Hans Huberman, I think, is presented as a more ideal citizen, a good man and a good person throughout the book. And he's not like this perfect being. He is complicated. He doesn't know exactly what to do all the time. He is scared at times. There's one section where, this is spoilers, he helps a Jewish man, and because he's helped a Jewish man, he is scared for his life. He is scared what the regime is going to do to him, but he knew it was the right thing to do. And thus, despite his fear, despite this unending trauma he's got because of that, just naturally he had to help this man. Not only that, he is soft, he is kind, but he's also hardworking. He is a hardworking man who is struggling financially, but whilst providing for his family, he's not overly harsh to his wife. He's not harsh to his foster daughter. Obviously, it is set in the context of the 1930s, so he's not like this perfect loving husband. He does have a little bit of an edge from the I would say from the 1930s, but unfortunately still in society we do have men who act that way, and unfortunately that's what's growing within these far-right circles that are trying to pull men in, pull young boys in. They're trying to get young boys to go back to that time. But even for that context, Hans is still kind to his wife. He's still kind to his family, even to his Nazi son who disrespects him. He still loves and cares for his son, and all the while he is this kind, soft-hearted man who is trying to educate his foster daughter, who is trying to help his local community the best he can. He's trying to help Jewish people who are being targeted by the Nazi regime. He is trying to help one specific character, which I won't give spoilers for because I don't want to keep giving spoilers for this book, even to the potential detriment to himself, because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's something that these far-right ideologues and these online personalities are trying to take away from young men and boys. They're trying to tell them everything you do has to be conditional. You're nice to someone because you want something back from them. You do XYZ thing because you're trying to enrich yourself. You are kind to someone of the opposite sex to you. And these far-right bigots also, target women as well. But it is predominantly men who fall for it, or young boys who fall for it. You are kind to someone of the other sex because you want to get something out of them. You do not acknowledge minorities because if you acknowledge them, it means you need to spread yourself wider to accept others. Whereas Hans Huberman simply does those things because he is a decent person and because he believes in the opposite to an oppressive regime. He's not necessarily described as left-wing, but when there is a character who is left-wing, he doesn't demonize them. He doesn't give a very liberal take of, oh, they're too far, they are very different. He just explains their ideological beliefs, something that the far right and these online personalities don't want you to do. They don't want you to understand other people's beliefs, because once you start understanding various things that isn't this far right ideology that they're trying to ingrain into these young boys, if they start learning and reading about other more humane ideologies, these people lose a grasp over young men and boys. Reading fiction like this is a great way to start understanding and learning that. Obviously, fiction isn't going to be perfect in educating you, but it's that good step into it. I have someone I know who is trying to get into reading. They want to read more non-fiction stuff, and I said to them, I think just get into reading fiction. It's definitely far more enjoyable, in my opinion, to just read fiction, get into it, get an understanding, get in a groove with your reading, and then transition into reading non-fiction stuff, and particularly stuff around things you are passionate about. So for myself, obviously, it's a lot of politics, a lot of history, and also a lot of football stuff, a lot of sports stuff also I'm reading. But that's a tangent about reading to this. So why should you read The Book Thief? Because it outlines the horrors of Nazi Germany without specifically pinpointing on death and destruction. Though obviously part of it is looking at the deaths and the torture that Nazi Germany inflicted onto particularly Jewish people in this book, but also just the German population as a whole. And also it gives you at least one character who is a good role model. There are other characters in there that are decent role models. Normally the children who haven't been negatively impacted by the Hitler Youth as of yet, because the kids in this book are generally entering the Hitler Youth, and then there are kids that have been there for longer who are brutal, like Nazi Germany was brutal like how these right-wing ideologues are online. So there are definitely more than just Hans Huberman who are a good role model, not just for young men but for people in general. But I specifically want to point out Hans Huberman because he is the character I saw the most as being this is the kind of man you would want to be, the kind of adult even you would want to be, at least in some instances. Again, he's not perfect. No one is. A lot of us have deep-seated fears. A lot of us are worried about what's going to happen. Some people just, lack confidence and need to build that. Hans Huberman had confidence, but he had trauma, he had fear. He didn't want to go back to war because of the horrors he saw. It's very much a very more human presentation of people in general and also of being a man. The way the right wing wants you to view, being a man, which is not a thing. It's you're just an adult, you're a person. The way the right wing wants you to view that is you have to be brutal, you have to be gruff, you have to be tough. And some of these ideas are just things that have been misinterpreted. Being tough, you can be tough, but being tough doesn't mean putting others down, doesn't mean being physically domineering over others. Being tough means perseverance. That's a good trait, but these right-wing ideologues who have gotten a grasp over young men and boys have taken it to its worst extremes, if that makes sense. Hans Huberman is a tough character. Max, I won't speak about him because he's a key character, I don't want to ruin, is a tough character. But the ways their toughness is presented is extremely different to how right-wing ideologues, whether it be the Nazis in this book or in real life, would try and present toughness. I hope that made sense. It made sense to me, so it should make sense. And that's why The Book Thief is a book you should try and get a young man or boy in your life to read. Again, not just young men or boys who should be reading this. anyone can read this. Everyone should read this, regardless of, you know, okay, not regardless of age. You know, obviously young children probably can't understand the book, but you know what I mean, regardless of age, gender, ideology, whatever. This is this is like, yeah, not like, it is an important book. And I'm glad I read it, because it definitely put me onto this track in the second half of this year of wanting to actually maybe do a bit more with understanding the deep roots and ideas you can find in fiction. You don't necessarily have to go to non-fiction to learn. Obviously, I do recommend reading non-fiction as well, reading important non-fiction as well, the likes of Frantz Fanon, Malcolm X, Angela Davies, Arundhati Roy, obviously. But also you can learn a lot from fiction. And I hope someone picks up this book and gives it to someone they are worried about, and hopefully it helps them. Thank you for watching. Once again, you can pick up this book from the description down below from bookshop.org, who works with small independent booksellers to get them a little bit more of a kickback whenever you buy a book through them. Alternatively, check out your local library. I love libraries. They are great. Ended this on a little bit more of a deeper note than I was going to, so this transition's a bit different, but thank you to my members. Here they are, my lovely members. They all get early access to videos. They get to have input in the videos that I'm making. They get their own special videos twice a month. They get special emojis and they get special badges. If you're interested in becoming a member, check out the join button below this video or on my channel. If not, you being here watching this video up until this point to the end, liking, subscribing, sharing, that genuinely helps a lot. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you read a great book today.